regarding Syria. In other words,
we are putting now Syria on hold until Ukraine
we might see
is
some
solved.
postponement for in
Syria.
Geneva the 3rd, okay, until Putin finish.
But taken from what you said, Dr. Sayyah, let me go back. Taken from what you said, that it might take even longer for Syria to be reached to a certain deal. Well, let us ask Mr. Savin about what the Syrian army is doing on the Syrian soil. We have the army putting a front foot in the battlefield, and it also looks overstretched. I mean, it is saving its combat troops for strategically important operations. Why not just fully engage its troops into the battle and take control of the grounds right now, when actually the West and Russia are engaged in Ukrainian talks?
For my opinion, situation in Syria very complex. Insurgents sometimes mix it with civic activists, and even inside militant groups there are different ideas how to fight and what to do on political level. So we have a few levels of conflict with intercrossed front lines, and there are special characteristics of landscapes where there is no possibility to do total control and to establish checkpoints. And this situation is very difficult to do counter-terrorism efforts or any conventional warfare. Different military strategies must be combined with special operations. For my opinion, big success for Syrian government is that there is no such kind of sanctions like no-fly zone in Libya.
Or Chapter 7 charter, for that matter, of the UN. I think he thought that I'm stopping him. I'm not stopping you of your thought, Dr. Savin. You can go, Mr. Savin, you can go ahead and continue. I think I lost him there. Well, Dr. Sayyah, hoping to ease suffering as from the Syrian crisis, we have the UN Security Council unanimously passed a resolution to boost access for humanitarian aid, where all 15 Security Council members have actually approved the resolution, including Russia and China, who have balked on resolutions in the past. Now, what made this resolution different from the others from the past and previous resolutions that both Russia and China chose not to veto?
Well, okay, the humanitarian situation in Syria reached to its peak, I mean, to an unprecedented level, okay, and everybody, you know, we saw several areas suffering from hunger, okay, and from, you know, in a very bad situation. And just I heard when I was coming to the studio that even there are 5,000 probably Syrian babies or you know, little children are suffering, and they are threatened to die because they don't have, you know, bad nutrition or something like that. Okay, so I believe the whole issue is a humanitarian issue. Okay, when it comes to humanitarian issue or to relieve the people, China and Russia, they will never mind doing this, okay, as long as they make sure that the resolution which is taken by the Security Council will not include any clause that will allow the West to do in Syria what they did in Libya. Remember Libya? They passed a resolution, and it implied implicitly a clause that allows them to attack Libya. Okay, this will never happen. So China and Russia will agree to any resolution passed by the Security Council as long as they make sure that it's only for humanitarian issues.
Well, there is a certain clause there that I'm going to ask you about, a certain statement in the resolution, but I need to go beforehand to Mr. Savin and ask him about the document that calls for the end of the violations and the violence for human rights sakes in Syria. Mr. Savin includes the use of barrel bombs by the government and condemns Al-Qaeda affiliated terror attacks. This is how it is said: Al-Qaeda affiliated terror attacks. But what about other attacks made by foreign backed insurgents or fighters inside Syrian soil? I mean, they are not Al-Qaeda affiliated, but it seems that this resolution is actually favoring certain extremist groups on behalf of others. What's your take on that?
It's problem mentioned in previous answer. How to separate terrorists, rebels, combatants, insurgents from each other if all the subjects of conflict have armed and to kill people. I think it is just demagogic trap of the West, especially provided to use some blank space in international legislation with back idea to have a free hands for the action. In reality, it is just about good terrorists and bad terrorists. But both of them are terrorists.
Mm-hmm. But so you think that the word that they used in the resolution that said Al-Qaeda affiliated terror attacks, how can they identify the terrorist attack as if it's Al-Qaeda or maybe not? How can that be identified by the West?
For the West, I think they will use very own logic. It's not possible to do the same logic, for example, in Syria, in Iran, and in Russia. There is, for my opinion, must to be an international special commission and to look what happens and how to check what Al-Qaeda to do and what maybe another military rebel group to do, I think.
Well, we'll have to take our second break for tonight before we continue our episode. Please stay tuned. We will be right back.
Beyond the lines, beyond the surface. Depth, clarity, substance. Beyond the discourse.
Beyond politics, beyond the shallowness of everyday politics. Evening. Women's rights redefined.
Welcome back to the Middle East stream. We are here with Dr. Edward Sayyah and Mr. Leonid Savin in Moscow now. Dr. Sayyah, we have the resolution that we were talking about before the break, the UN resolution concerning Syria. It does not call for any sanctions or punishment and only refers to what they called further steps to be taken should this resolution not be implemented. Now, what do they mean by further steps? Could it mean like no-fly zones or Charter 7 of the UN?
I would say that it's just talk, okay? Otherwise, China and Russia would not have approved, okay? Or why they haven't vetoed such a resolution? Because they were sure that this resolution was only intended to for humanitarian issues. So I believe threatening using Chapter 7 or whatever, or using the force against Syria is, too little, too late. Okay? Because had the United States wanted to militarily intervene in Syria, it would have done that long time ago.
But Dr. Edward, yesterday, exactly, we had Israeli warplanes with a raid on Syrian territories. So that's kind of a, let's say, an intervention.
Okay. Well, it's not the first time Israel has done that. Okay, it happened before, once or twice, as you remember.
4 times, actually.
Okay, within the Syrian internal. Okay, so I believe that nobody is going to intervene in Syria, because in this case you are heading toward a regional war, full-fledged regional war, including Iran, okay, Islamic Republic of Iran, and also Turkey, and also Israel. And nobody knows what's going to happen. Probably also the involvement of Russia.
Why is Israel taking the risk then and issuing these air raids?
Who, Israel?
Yes. Why is Israel taking the risks and launching? This is the fifth
Such
air raid on
yes.
Syrian soil, but they say that they are targeting Hezbollah, but it is Syrian soil.
It's just only from time to time to prove or to say, listen, we are here, okay? Don't, disregard us in terms of any future settlement in the Middle East. You know that the Palestinian problem, okay, or Palestinian settlement is stumbled now, is stumbling, okay? And I don't think that they are going to give President Mahmoud Abbas anything, okay? So it will end to total failure. In this case, probably Israel is trying also to just, to show that it is there, okay? But I will repeat, okay, Israel or any other country, especially the West, will never intervene militarily in Syria like what happened in Libya or in Iraq unless there is something which is hidden under the table, and probably there is a plan between the great powers to restructure or reshuffle or re-engineer the entire Middle East, namely dividing Syria probably between the majority Sunni and the minority Alawi and Christian. And also this will also go for Lebanon and for
affect
Iraq,
other regional countries as well.
Iraq. And then we will ask ourselves why Iraq is still kept as an open wound, okay, and things are also, going on there.
Well, Mr. Savin, going from what Dr. Sayyah has said, we have a lot of press reports that are claiming that an army of foreign-backed fighters are being brought about from Jordan into southern Syria for a possible military offensive against the Syrian army. How will Russia react in case such a scenario is actually brought into the arena in Syria?
At first, I think that Russia will act through Security Council of United Nations because very strange situation on our western border, I mean Ukraine. I think that Putin will think twice before to act on Middle East, I mean military act. So at first Russia will do any efforts in diplomatic level, in the international level.
Well, Dr. Sayyah, then the failure to advance to the goals of the goal of what the West is claiming to be a regime change that we saw politically in Geneva, asked many times. They also did not even set a date for the resumption of Geneva 2 or 3, for that matter, together with a noticeable deterioration in relations between Washington and Moscow. This have led to a shift back toward an escalation of the U.S. intervention in Syria. We have heard a lot of U.S. officials talking about this in the past couple of weeks. Do you think that Obama administration might waive again the option of a military intervention on Syrian soil as a result of this failure in Geneva?
First of all, let me reassure you, okay, and everybody, that the United States of America will never intervene militarily in Syria, okay? And it will think twice and 3 times before doing that. Even within the United States, okay, many people, or the majority, are opposed to any military intervention on the part of the United States. As you know, that
but
Obama...
What if the U.S. gave a green light for Israel to react on behalf of the U.S.?
I told you then what's going to happen. Iran is going to come into the battle, okay? And this, you are talking now, the situation will change then into a fully fledged regional war, okay? So the issue will be different. I am saying as is now, I bet on it that the United States will not dare intervening militarily in Syria, because this will cause, will lead to a fully fledged regional war, okay, with Iran in, with Turkey in. And remember that Iran, okay, already announced that it's gonna hit, it was gonna hit all Arab Gulf countries in case of any, and also Israel in case of any Israeli intervention. So I don't think that there will be any Israeli intervention or any, okay, Western military intervention in Syria unless they reached a point, okay, that they wanted to divide the Middle East or to restructure it into new bases. And then, and only then, we would have entered a new ball game, different than now, okay? But if you want to take it as is now, okay, I don't think that there will be any military intervention because the United States is not ready. I mean, President Obama is not ready to repeat what his predecessor, President George Bush, did in Iraq. It is very costly.
But taken from what you said, Dr. Sayyah, Mr. Savin, do you think that there are actually increasingly insistent claims from Washington that it must intervene militarily because of Syria is becoming a haven for Al-Qaeda elements that could actually launch terror attacks against the U.S. and other Western countries as well? Now, might that be an excuse for the U.S. to engage in possible drone attacks on Syria as wise like what we are seeing in Yemen? For instance, to change the balance of power on the ground?
Yes, drones is new useful tool for Washington, especially for targeted killing program. But this kind of weapon depends of surrounding, and there is possibility of electronic attack or hacking of the streams used for drones. So I think this Russian military intelligence assistance for Syria, it will be not so useful in Syria.
Well, Dr. Sayyah, the reality on the ground in Syria is that there is a conflict pitting both the ISIL, which is the Islamic State of Iraq, and the Levant, which is expelled by Al-Qaeda. And we have against the Al-Qaeda-affiliated Al-Nusra Front and other Islamist factions. While Washington talks incessantly about arming moderate and secular forces, but it can never provide the name or identity of such forces that are moderate in Syria. So what guarantees that these arms are, if provided by the U.S. to Al-Qaeda-affiliated Nusra for once, will not also end up being a threat to U.S. national security?
There is no guarantee whatsoever. First of all, let me tell you that I don't believe that there are any moderate terrorist group in Syria. They're all alike. Okay, all of them, Al-Qaeda, Daesh, Al-Nusra, all of them, okay, have the very same thinking regarding, what's going to happen in the Middle East. They're all fundamentalists. So as far as United States is, trying to, United States is only trying to, what you get to a matter of face saving. Okay, in front, in the eyes of her allies in the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia and other countries, that we did not give you up, okay, and we are still there. Remember, by the beginning of the events in Syria, that the United States, and Prince Bandar bin Sultan, and now he
vanished for some reason.
He was dismissed. Okay, so I believe that United States might give, I'm not denying, might give some weapons to the opposition groups, but I don't think to the extent that they will threaten the Syrian regime. Remember that United States doesn't need to intervene militarily in Syria in order to finish those groups. Probably, in the back of her mind, she is relying on the Syrian government, the Syrian regime, to take care of them.
Well, Mr. Savin, it must be widely clear for Russia and its allies that behind all of these pretexts, not so clear truth, let's say, and I don't want to say lies by the West, is the drive by U.S. imperialism to assert its hegemony over the oil-rich Middle East and to weaken its rivals, which are Iran, Russia, and China in the region, by employing militarist threats and by actions that often pose the danger of a regional and even a global threat. But how do you suggest for these regional allies to oppose the Western agenda for the Middle East?
Exactly. It is necessity number one to form international hegemony alliance. It must be agenda of multipolar world order with zones of collective responsibility. For the moment, only first steps are done, and current conflicts in the world from one side are efforts of United States to keep our regime of global dominance, and from other side, it is a reminder that we need to cooperate more closely against North American imperialism and its allies.
Well, Dr. Sayyah, in the event of Ukraine becoming a priority for Russia and putting aside Syria for the instant, what do you think will happen on the ground in Syria and the upcoming battle of Kalamoun and Daraa?
Well, as I told you, Russia, although she might be very much consumed with what's happening in Ukraine, but Russia can still send okay, some weapons or arms to the Syrian army.
But there are press reports saying that there are more than 7,000 foreign-backed insurgents that are going to come from Jordan into southern Syria.
Yeah, but remember that Iran is watching the whole situation, and you will not just only stand aloof watching what's happening without intervening. And also Hezbollah, okay, this group, I mean, the two warring factions, okay, are mobilizing all their forces and their allies. Okay, on the one hand, the regime also knows what's going to happen and knows the intention of the opposition. And I'm not denying that the opposition also knows what's going to happen. But I can bet you that nothing is going to happen, and Damascus will never be threatened, okay, and they will not be able to defeat the Syrian army. I believe that the issue in Syria could not be solved, okay, militarily. Okay, sooner or later they have to sit to the negotiating table and negotiate a settlement, okay, with the supervision or the supremacy, okay, of Russia and United States of America.
Countries.
So in general, what I'm going to say tonight, that although the Russian leadership now is very much consumed with what happened in Ukraine,
it will not affect the Syrian ground.
But it will never allow Syria to slip out. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edward Sayyah, political analyst, for being with us tonight in this very interesting episode. And thank you very much, Mr. Leonid Savin, editor-in-chief of Geopolitica magazine from Moscow, for joining us. That was our show for tonight. Thank you for watching, and good night.